Namo Namaha. Om Gyan Tirumandasya Gyanjana Salakaya Chakshuramitam Yena Tashmai Shri Guru Namaha. Trinada Pisunichana Tarora Pisa Ishtana Amanina Manadena Kirtani Sadahari Vachavigam Anashukravigam Jivavigam Mudara Pastavigam Mitamvigam Yovishaheta Dira Salvamapiman Prithvim Sasisyat Anya Balast Tatinukam Susamik Shamano Bunjana Vetma Kritam Vipikam Hitvakaputi Vididam Namaste Jivata Yomukti Sadaya Bak Anya Balasata Sunyam Gyan Kamriana Virtam Anukalenya Krishna Shilanam Bhakti Uttama Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadata Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Haribol, thank you, Shodananda Prabhu. Can you hear me clearly? Okay, good. I feel before we start, I want to thank everyone for coming. I feel very grateful that we have yet another session on such an important topic. Relationships, marriage and intimacy, which is, I guess, a topic that Yashoda and I were very keen to do, because to some extent it's not discussed and not enough in our devotee community. So we discuss a lot of these high topics, a lot of Lila Tattva, a lot of Siddhanta, but sometimes it's not discussed enough how we can incorporate these things into our daily lives. So we feel very grateful that we're able to have a format where we can discuss these things. I think as well, another thing that I was reflecting on was that usually our sessions seem to naturally follow on from one another thematically somehow. And last week we did karma, and obviously when we're paired together with someone, there can be a lot of karma there. So the question begs, how can we move away from a karmic relationship with someone into a relationship that's completely and undividedly focused on serving Shri Shri Radha Krishna? So with that, I'm going to hand over to Yashodananda Prabhu, who is going to introduce our two speakers. And then after that, we will have questions and answers. So thank you very much. Very well.
Thank you, Tarun. Thank you for all your seva, your organization, your enthusiasm, and for being a beautiful devotee. And I pay my humble obeisances to my illustrious and most merciful Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, to the Parampara, to Gornitai and Shri Shri Radha and Krishna, all the assembled devotees, and all the devotees who will watch this in recordings in the future. Bhaktivinoda Thakur did not set up a single temple. His son, who he prayed for, that he would have a son who is a pure devotee, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, he famously set up 64 arms of the Gaudiya Math. But he also wrote a paper which explained that the institution is actually the death knell of spiritual life. It's the death knell of spirituality. So in some ways you could say his life was a beautiful reconciliation of contradictions. He had to set up those temples because he had to expand Krishna consciousness. But he knew that temples aren't necessarily the future of Krishna consciousness. They're one aspect of Krishna consciousness's expansion. The future of Krishna consciousness relies hugely upon the success of the Grihastha ashram within the Varna ashram system. Householders provide the wealth, the stability, and actually increasingly, is my opinion, reading what the acharyas have said and watching trends in the world in general, the Krishna consciousness will be hugely preached through Namahat programs all over the world. And they can only be successful if the Grihastha ashram is successful. And the Grihastha ashram can only be successful if we know how to get married, stay married, have children, and serve Krishna at the same time. So that's what tonight is all about: relationships, marriage, and intimacy. And just to put the beautiful couple who are going to speak in a moment, put them at ease a little bit. We did not ask them to speak because they are some kind of perfect couple. There's no such thing as a perfect couple. But they are beautiful examples of Krishna conscious devotees doing their very, very best to live beautifully in that ashram. Not perfectly, not pure devotees, but beautifully doing the best they can do, able to share with us their insights and both their wins and losses, their gains and their successes and their failures. And I'm very privileged to know them as my friends. My lamentation is that I'm in London and they're in California. Otherwise, I would be having their prasadam at least 3 times a week. I'm so happy to introduce to you Sriman Visvambhara Prabhu and Srimati Gauravani Didi, who have, Visvambhara is the managing director of US Capital. So he has helped build with Yamuna Prasad a very extensive banking business across the US. It's starting to branch outside of America too. It's a very substantial business. He's got a lot of responsibility, and somehow he manages to do that, help as he has done from the beginning, Gurudev's book publications, GVP, serving assiduously on Bhakti projects and the Braj Bhuni group and the Bhaktivedanta Charitable Trust. And he does that very beautifully, and because he's also helped and supported by a beautiful wife who has had 3 children who are totally gorgeous: Anurag, who he's age 10, Dira Samir, aged 8, and Kanika, age 5. So Gauravani has quite a lot on her plate, and she also serves on boards at public schools and the Children Athletic Club. So they live a very busy business life, family life, charitable life, and kiddie life. So I'm very excited to present them both to you. I don't know who's speaking first, or whether you're both speaking at the same time, because that's what normally happens in a marriage. Well, over to you guys. I'm so happy you're presenting. Hare Krishna, Dandarat Pranam.
Well, thanks Yashodanandan Prabhu and Tarun Krishna Prabhu for hosting. Really, Yashoda said, we want to speak about marriage, and all I could think about was, wow, you know, the photo of the memory of Gurudev, just arranging everything. Really, we're just kind of sevaks of Gurudev that he more or less, I mean, magically manifested during his writing retreat the union of our families, and we come. You know, we're fortunate to come from a really great, great families that actually had different backgrounds of family dynamics. And I think, to be quite candid, being raised in Krishna consciousness, Gauravani could speak about her background, but I came from a background of, had the optionality. My parents were going to send me to Gurukul New Vrindavan, but then the whole Gurukul system was falling apart during the 80s, and my parents chose not to in the early 90s. So being raised in Krishna consciousness is a really interesting journey, to say the least. And then integrating within being raised in Krishna consciousness, growing up as a teenager, a tween, the teenager, and adult, and integrating that into, how do I say, real world. That has presented a lot of opportunities, but also challenges. And hey, with great success comes extraordinary challenges. And so I found an excellent partner in my life, a friend, first and foremost, that had, in my opinion, a similar but different background, that we could thrive together, and we were able to, we appreciated the same things. We're not really organized religion kind of folks, even though our parents co-founded the Krishna consciousness experience in the West, right? And institutionalized that Krishna consciousness experience through temples and ashrams and bhakti programs, even though our parents were either gurus or bhakti leaders or temple presidents or whatever it was in that ISKCON globe. We're the fruit of that, and our experiences, our shared experiences, I think, are different perspectives of how we wanted to express our Krishna consciousness, live it, and then in terms of dating, being friends, and then we were doing service together for Gurudev first, and then we were obviously that service grew, and you associate a lot, then you start flirting, and then play happens, and then after play you should have some responsibility, put the toys away, and take responsibility. And so I took some responsibility. Anyways, I'll give the floor to Gauravani to give a little background, and then fast forward to how we hooked up.
Thank you for inviting me to be here, Yashoda Prabhu, and it's nice to see some familiar faces, Budara and Lalita Prabhu. And Gauravani, I was born and raised in the Krishna conscious movement. So my father is Bhagavan Das, formerly Bhagavan Goswami, and my mother is Krishna Bhamini. Both joined in the 60s, straight out of University of Buffalo. They were taught a Bhagavad Gita class by Rupanuga Prabhu, one of the early ISKCON devotees of Srila Prabhupada. And their last semester of university, they took this Bhagavad Gita class, and basically the whole entire class became devotees. And so I was born into this movement. And so I kind of come into this conversation with a little bit of baggage. So I can kind of take the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then I have been able to make it my own. I've also had opportunities to be far from devotees and near devotees. I can say I have so much gratitude that in the last, from 2005 is when Gurudev accepted me as his disciple. So I had an initiation in Navadvip in 2005, and then for 5 years, Visvambhara and I together from 2005 to 2010, our focus was to be with Gurudev. So while he was on the planet, we wholeheartedly took every opportunity to be with him at any festival. We traveled to India on numerous occasions for Navadvip Parigram and Kartik and any other festivals. And
Europe, North America.
Yeah, we were so blessed to have such amazing association with Gurudev. So I'm a little all over the place because I'm not used to speaking to a screen, but we did come together as a couple in 2006 under interesting circumstances. And from 2006 to 2009, we had an opportunity to date before we took it to the marriage commitment. And at that time in 2009, we got married in front of Srila Gurudev in a very magical ceremony. So before that, Visvambhara was able to bring me on to some of the service he was doing with Bhakti projects and with GVP. And that was the foundation of our connection, actually, more than some attraction or more than pretty much anything else. That was the very foundation. It was engagement in service. And then it, you know, through time and getting to know each other and becoming friends, then it became clear that we were very similar and on kind of, we wanted to be on the same track, and that was to serve Gurudev and have Gurudev in the center. I don't know anything about Krishna consciousness, even though I was born and raised in it. I like to say that it's, for me, it's like, if it doesn't feel real, then I cannot do it, because I was raised with fanaticism, and I was raised waking up for Mangal Artik at 4 years old, being in Gurukul for many, many years till I was 12. So everything about Gurudev was love and affection, and that's all I know. I don't know Siddhanta, I don't know Shastra, I don't know anything, but I love Gurudev. He's my spiritual father, and I want to please him. So that was kind of, again, I'm all over the place, but that was the foundation.
I think I want to reiterate that.
That was the foundation. And then when Gurudev married us, he gave us some very, and leading up to that, he gave us some very deep instructions as how to be as a couple. And every day, you know, we can reach into that instruction, even though sometimes we forget, and kind of keep that in the center. So now we have 3 children. Today was the first day back at school. I was telling, today was the first day back at school in a year and a half of COVID nonsense. And we have 3 children, 10, 8, and almost 5. And they all left to school today. So this is a very special day, because as a mother who's home with the kids, my little birds are all 3 away today, so it's quiet. So that's amazing.
It's the first time. It's the first time she could do a Zoom conference call.
Yeah, so I can think without a million interruptions. But anyways, that's my background a little bit. So I born and raised a devotee, left for like 10 years when I was in university, and did my thing away from devotees. And then Gurudev was miraculous at kind of pulling at the heartstrings, and for the first time in my life, I said, wow, this is real. This is what they were trying to tap into. This is what
back
they
in
must,
the 60s.
This is what they must have felt like when they were around
meeting
Prabhupada.
Prabhupada. Yeah.
And it was like an epiphany. And I actually
I want to reiterate something that you just said about the colorfulness of meeting Prabhupada, that our parents, my father, Hridaya Govinda Prabhu, joined in 67 with at Columbus, Ohio, Hayagriva and Kirtananda Maharaj, introduced him to Krishna consciousness, my father. And my mother joined in the early 70s in Mexico City. The interactions they had with Prabhupada, I think, and in what we heard in the infancy, the pioneer years, especially the late 60s of the Krishna consciousness movement, what I heard from my father and what she heard and also got to experience a little bit from her father and mother in the pioneer years, that made an impression on us that established that Krishna consciousness wasn't necessarily an institutional experience. It was like an open, colorful journey, really beautiful. And I think as we grew up, though, in the institution, we're able to see and experience. We were able to hear from our parents how beautiful and colorful it was, but we were also able to. We grew up and experienced the institutionalization, which turned us off. And so we had some good contrast so that we could discern when we connected with Gurudev, both of us. I connected with Gurudev in 03, she connected to 05. When we both connected with Gurudev, we were able to discern that, wow, Srila Bhaktivinoda Narayan Maharaj, Gurudev, he's the gold standard. This is the Acharya that we've been waiting to connect with, that this is our Prabhupada. This is our Prabhupada.
And I think one of the things that was really clear, both of us, I think, can agree that we had some very sweet and intimate time with Srila Gurudev that maybe a lot of people didn't have that closeness in the physical sense. And he was able to give us certain, instructions and practical instructions as well. Of course, Gurudev is not of this realm, but he was very practical. And I saw that from the very first moment that I met him. Actually, the very first thing he ever said to me is he put his hand up and he said, I want that you should be happy. And really, right, in this life, we're all looking for happiness. We're all looking for pleasure, but what is true happiness? And so what Gurudev gave us is what is true happiness, because life is fleeting. It's very quick. We're here in a minute. I feel like my first son was born one blink of an eye ago, and now he's 10, and my daughter is 5 off to school. So he was very practical. And I think that if I could convey anything, he always wanted us to be practical with where we were at, but remembering what was in the center, what was the goal. And I think that's kind of what was the foundation for us. Mm-hmm. Being able to take what he gave us, but also for me, I know it's like baby steps in incorporating, spiritual life and material life and kind of bridging it together in a way that can work. That doesn't mean like, if I do this, then I can't do this. So that was like kind of a dogmatic approach that I was raised with. But I think going forward, we are both in the world and we're both in this beautiful spiritual family, but we have to be able to bridge that together by, again, aligning ourselves with where we're at and where we're going, but also being able to kind of like, reach across the aisle, I guess you could say.
Full on integration.
And having a well-rounded experience for our kids, and one that's not kind of forced on them. And it's been really interesting as a parent to see children that are being exposed and raised as devotees, but doing it because they want to, participating because they want to, and because there's joy in it and love and sweetness in it, as opposed to, it's time for Mangal Artik, it's time for Guru Puja. Now
it's time for Tulsi Puja.
Yeah, not that there shouldn't be some discipline, but I think where it was like forced, more like
we make it fun. I make it fun with the kids. For me, Krishna consciousness needs to be the way my father and mother did. It's beautiful, right? It's not, and her and I have a little different backgrounds because I didn't live in the temple with my parents. My parents, Narmada and Hridaya Govinda, they ended up moving outside the temple and doing a lot of devotional service. So then when I went to the temple, it was a fun experience. And so for me, when I'm raising the kids or with Gauravani, it needs to be fun. Tulsi Puja, Artis, Kirtans, it's an experience. It's an expression. It's not regimen. So I think that's really, Gurudev and the Christian consciousness fun is the center of the core of our relationship, along with friendship. So it's complete integration. It's not, okay, we're God brother and God sister, we're married, Dharma, and then my business is my business. What I do in Vegas stays in Vegas, or what I do in New York stays in New York. No, Gauravani's integrated within also my business life, my entertainment life. It's all integrated, the charities. So it's not, we don't segregate I don't segregate my life, and she's completely part of everything I do. We do it in partnership.
Yeah, and I was going to say to go back from having experienced dating and being with other men that were not devotees, that was my experience. So it was to translate being with a devotee and having that was an instant breath of fresh air. It was an instant weight off my shoulders, because it was already right from the beginning having somebody that you right there had so much in common with that was not available to me with any of the other relationships I had been in. It was like this, we could just, what's the word? Like, we were so far ahead just that we had that
because of our backgrounds.
Yeah, it was like, it wasn't trying to push somebody to understand something or
to
like,
be vegetarian.
There's
certain things that you take for granted.
We actually see a lot now where, a devotee meets a non-devotee and they try to make them into a devotee, or they try to be, parallel journeys, but it's really hard. And a lot of times people are open-minded, and then
you get out of integrity. It's a little awkward.
It's not impossible. It's not impossible, but it definitely makes it easier when you have that already established as the center. And I think that for us, that was really important, because it like far and away blew out all my other, experiences, because there was always some big thing missing. And that was this connection, this natural connection towards Krishna, towards Guru, and that really, and even something like vegetarianism. I see a lot of friends that, it doesn't seem that important in the beginning, and then until it's not, I'm not talking about, Vaishnav couples. I'm talking about, it's hard in the world, you think, oh, I can be with somebody that's, vegetarianism is such and such, and until kids are there, and then all of a sudden the other partner changes their mind. And so these things are very important to establish in the beginning of the relationship, like red lines, like there's certain red lines, I guess, is where I'm kind of heading. Like once those were out of the way, and I knew we would never have to tackle those things again, it was just, we were able to move forward quickly. I don't know if that makes sense, without those are big things for devotees, that you have to get past. But with us having both had this, we were able to just kind of get on with that. Does anyone have any questions, or we're talking intimacy. Are we on?
Oh, we're talking. We could talk intimacy. I guess we talked about relationship, marriage, and then intimacy. I guess so. We could talk in
10 minutes, or you can go to Q&A. It's up to you.
Okay.
Okay. We marriage and then intimacy. I mean, marriage. I like to. We'll start with marriage, and then marriage marriage is not just of the individuals. I mean, the core of marriage is obviously the partners, right? That's the core. But also marriage is also the families, the dynamics, and the fact, like, the one partner is marrying into her family, she's marrying into my family, the relationship dynamics with the in-laws, the relationship dynamics with all other relationships and other quote unquote stakeholders. That's what marriage is. And traditionally marriage, think of yourself as a kingdom. All right. I always tell everybody that, Krishna consciousness It's Raj Vidya. It's knowledge for the kings. That's Krishna consciousness. So Tarun Krishna Prabhu, as an example, he is the king himself, right? All the audience members here that are here, the ladies and gentlemen that are here, they are engaged and enrolled in Raj Vidya, the knowledge for kings and queens, because our soul potential is that, right? So we ourselves represent our own kingdoms. So Visvambhara Das, Gauravani Dasi, or other married couples or other couples that are dating, two partners that are dating, they each have respective kingdoms. And those kingdoms, when you're coming together, that's a coming together of not just yourselves, which I'm guilty of being extremely selfish. And those that know me know that I've, in my 20s, especially in my early 30s, I'm probably a really expert selfish personality. But over the years and over the decades here, I've learned that marriage is not just about me, mine, and or her and herself, but it's also the marriage of these kingdoms, right? And it's something that I've come to appreciate more and more and more. And so my duty and my dharma, that is in my opinion, that's a step in Krishna consciousness. I can't be in Seva Kunj. I'm not qualified to be in Seva Kunj to practice Nam Bhajan, 64, 128 rounds, like some of my senior godbrothers or senior god sisters. My bhajan and my kirtan right now is my seva to my community, my godbrothers and god sisters, my god uncles, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, my own father, my own mother, right? Her siblings, and then vice versa. So we have service to each other, which really then enhances that's what marriage is about, right? It's not, and it's not just a love affair. Love affairs come and go. Now, obviously, love affairs are a core. Intimacy and friendship is a core. Playfulness and romanticism is a part of the marriage, and it's essential for marriage to work. But beyond that, though, for marriage to sustain any bumps that will come, like in friendships, like in partnerships, any partnership, there's going to be bumps. Any business relationship, there's going to be bumps. Expect that. So to sustain those bumps, we've got to think ourselves beyond just the self, thinking more selflessly. And so when the projects I'm involved in, like such as New Brudge, for me, New Brudge is my family. I look at those children, I look at my godbrothers and god sisters over there, they're senior to me. They are by extension, they're closest to my DNA, to my sons and my daughter. That closeness, there's something spiritual. It's beyond just DNA. All right, genetics, it's beyond genetics. I'm taking responsibility to assist and help build a school, right? I want to do that. I need to do that. I just can't think about the private school or the public schools over here in my community and making sure that my kids have the swim club and they're part of the yacht club, whatever it is. I want my God family to have those aspirations. And that's thinking more selflessly, because that enhances the family that my children are a part of. And that's what marriage, you start thinking in terms of kingdoms, in my opinion. It's not so, bhajan is one thing, experiencing sweetness, but also then like prachar, right? Sharing that sweetness is something that's a big part of Krishna consciousness. Practicing bhajan in isolation. I remember a great Vaishnav, Bhaktivedanta Tirthamraj, said bhajan in isolation. Gurudev told me, no. Sankirtan, prachar. He says, this is how you get Gurudev's favor. And so Bhaktivedanta Tirthamraj, he had Gurudev's favor, right? Sripad Premananda Prabhu, Madhav Raj, they have Gurudev's favor. Why? They're not doing bhajan in isolation. Budara, he does not do bhajan in isolation. Yashodanandan, I see you on the streets. You're doing Harinam over there in the UK, right? Budara is engaged in prachar, always. So, right, that's what marriage is.
From a practical standpoint, I can say that Visvambhara always includes me, whether it's you know, we're always in partnership when it comes to the household, decisions about the children, and then from a spiritual standpoint, you know, he's always keeps me in the loop with what's happening with his Sangha service, or we bounce ideas off of each other when it comes to even business and practical stuff. He, you know, I go to business meetings and business dinners, and so in that way we're in you know, that world. And again, when it comes to like our Gurudev's projects, he always brings me in as you know, as needed, or just you know, to feed ideas off of, and then to get my opinions. And I think so in that way I do feel like we're true partners, which again, I feel really blessed that we have that. Importantly, what we try to do with each other is communicate. I know that that's kind of cliche, but really important to make the time to communicate. And okay, so we've been married since 2009. Practically speaking, we sit down as a family, you know, for meals. You know, we Visvambhara, especially through COVID, has made one of the bright lights, and one of the silver linings has been actually a more standardized or regimented practice of bhakti. So the kids wake up and, you know, do a little puja, do Tulsi puja, and a little small Guru puja. And so that gets the day started and ends with, you know, reading Bhagavatam, or so kind of that's like our day. But in between, we're also working and doing all the things that that we need to do on a day-to-day basis. But you know, whenever we have an opportunity to host Vaishnavs, we have tried to do that pre-COVID. You know, Didi, Madhav Maharaj, we've had an opportunity to host whoever comes through the Bay Area, and you know, host programs when that's been possible. So, you know, we try to do that. We try to, you know, whenever we can, from a monetary position, if we're able to, is donate to the traveling sannyasis, and tithing has been a really important thing for our family. You know, it kind of keeps what's important there again in the center. So there's certain things that you can do to really kind of try to remind yourself, like, okay, so, you know, here's a check for, you know, soccer for the boys, but also here's a donation for, you know, Badger or whatnot. And then again, so I was talking about communication. We have over the years, I think like most couples, kind of come waxing and waning, but we usually kind of pull back when we see that tether being pulled farther apart. We come together and we really try to communicate, because we're friends foremost. I think we can do that. And you know,
yeah, we communicate actually, this is a good precursor to intimacy. You can't, you know, and intimacy immediately, I'm a man, so I think intimacy, I think of sex, right? But you can't have intimacy from a man perspective without having the emotional connection, that authenticity of, like, you know, and that's really that's the water, or the source of intimacy, is communication and connection, right? And then now I know intimacy, when there's one of the 4 rules is illicit sex, and no illicit sex. Now Prabhupada and now Gauravani's like doing this elbow thing. Don't talk about this. You know, like no, I mean, this is important. This is where I wanted to get. This is where I wanted to get to, because I know there's a lot of couples out there that probably question this, and it's very important that in a relationship, in my opinion, a marriage or relationship to work, there should be intimacy. Now, there's intimacy in a dharmic way, and then there's intimacy outside of dharma. In a marriage, it's licit sex, and one should licit, which is allowable. Now, anything too much isn't good anyways. Prabhupada uses this great example of milk. It's an excellent example, because people think we have to give up everything. But if you give up everything, you become nothingness. And nothingness is, we're not about nothingness. We're not atheists, right? We love beautiful things. We love tasteful things. We love wonderful experiences. So hence, there's prasadam, there's Didi worship, there's kirtan, right? And the same thing, sex is allowable in a marriage, in Dharma, right? Just like, and Prabhu uses this example, milk. If you take milk raw, right, without the physician in an adharmic way, it will ruin your stomach. But that same milk, if it's taken in a different form, in yogurt, it helps your gut. Prabhupada uses that example when it comes to illicit and illicit sex. So intimacy, in my opinion, that's necessary in a marriage. So it's tasteful, right? And I encourage romantic exchanges. I encourage open dialogue about that too. You know, I don't want to shove it over like a judo Christian way and just like slam ourselves in the back. I am not about that, because Krishna consciousness is beautiful, right? And we could see, you know, in each other a reflection of that beauty. We could. Anyways, we'll end there and let's go.
I was just going to say, like, whenever you suppress anything, whenever you suppress food, you know, hunger leads to pain and suffering when you suppress anything. So I think it's important that, again, with balance and moderation and, you know, so intimate connection is essential. It's important. You know, it's also important we're raising Krishna conscious children. It's also important for them to know and see loving, affectionate parents. So again, there's many kinds of intimacy, and sex is just one of them. So there's physical intimacy, just in connection and eye contact, voice level, how you talk to each other.
Yeah.
They are one of the things that we've done pretty much for the last 10 years consistently is we do a date night once a week.
And the children know?
The children see us, they see us getting ready. They know what we're doing. We're spending time together, because before there were children, there was just us. So I think that's an important thing for them to see. And just for other couples out there that may be watching or maybe watching this later, it has been a very important thing for us to do that. Even though it's hard when you have small children and you have to leave them sometimes, it's like putting your marriage first. It's like putting your mask on before you can put the mask on the children. So for us, that took a little bit of work to get to that place, and especially as a mom, to think that that's okay to put your marriage before your kids. I think mothers, we always tend to want to put our kids first always, but I think I guess that comes with a little bit of wisdom in a marriage. You kind of realize that they're going to be gone, and if this is not strong, then, you know, so it's important that the marriage is looked at as an important thing, and that physical intimacy, that making time for each other, whether it's just over dinner without distractions, to connect on a, you know, a lot of times when we do our date nights, we'll connect on seva, we'll connect on spiritual topics. Vishram will talk to me about some Harikatha he heard. And so it's not like we're just going and just, you know, it's a connection with each other to, again, that rope to come closer together.
We'll listen to some
so
jazz and then I'll talk about Ratha Yatra.
Did we hit all the points that we had talked about? We talked about
It's beautiful. I was just wondering whether you had room for a 53-year-old kid to come and stay with you, because I like it.
anytime. Oh my God. We're really looking
It was
forward.
good. You got a morning program, evening program. On date night, I can mislead all your kids. That's fantastic, because you'll be out of the way.
Yeah. No, anyone that comes through the Bay, we're happy to.
Absolutely.
Lalita, Buddha, we miss you guys.
So questions,
Be careful what you
Q&A,
wish for.
I was worried. No, I was worried about 30 minutes, but it went fast, and I'm not sure we talked about all the things that we had planned on, but maybe in the Q&A they'll come up.
They'll come up, don't worry.
Yeah, I expect.
Yeah. Before we go on to the Q&A, I want to thank you once again for coming. I think it was a really beautiful, and I feel very grateful how open both of you were. I mean, I've never met either of you before. I've only had a brief interaction with Visvambhara, Prabhu. But I feel like I feel like all of a sudden I know you very well. And there was one thing that you actually touched on a couple times, said in different ways. And I'm going to say it in a different way. You kind of presented that you have a very holistic approach to your relationship, where both of you are supporting each other in all aspects of your respective lives. Like you said, Visvambhara Prabhu, you don't leave like home life at home. Like Gauravani Didi is part of your work life, part of your seva, and vice versa. So I think that was a really beautiful thing. So I wanted to mention that.
Thanks.
And in terms of questions, I'm just going to say right now, we're not going to be able to answer all of these. And there are so many good questions. Like,
So many good questions. All right. Well.
Like usually we get a certain amount of questions, but like I just look at them and just go, no, like that's not a good question. But I'm looking at all of these questions tonight, and they all look like great questions. So we've kind of got a mixture of questions that are directed towards just the two of you, and overall questions that I guess we can ask the panel. Geez, they're just coming in more and more as I say that. So I think maybe we're gonna I guess go with the flow, but I think I'll start off
No particular order.
Yeah, no particular order. I'm gonna start off with a question, I think, for the panel. And I'm gonna ask everyone on the panel to keep their answers, because we've got quite a few panel members. Maybe you should have known Prabhu, I think 6 or 7. So I'm going to ask all the panel members to keep their answers to 1 minute maximum. I'm going to be timing it, and I'm going to hold up a sign when you're done. So yeah, I'm asking you to all to keep your answers to a minimum. So the first question I'm going to ask is, what about if your relationship is opposite to this couple? I like how this starts. I asked if I should leave my partner when I met the devotees and was told that my association would do him good. He still drinks and smokes, and I find the energy very heavy, but I perceive in my bhakti. So part of the question is sometimes finding out what the questioner means. I guess they mean, but how can I perceive this through the lens of bhakti? So yeah, I'm going to ask Badara Prabhu, do you want to answer first?
Mute.
Oh, sorry. So let me try to get the essence of the question. So in a way, we have what appears to be an ideal couple in front of us. And I know, but let's say it like that. And so what happens if you find yourself in a relationship where you're not an ideal couple? My short answer to that is that if you're in a relationship, relationships are not just Hollywood happy ever after experiences. I always describe them as fields for self-realization. And the more you're committed to a relationship, the more you're going to get out of it. And I've never known anybody having a relationship, and I'm sure the ideal couple here will tell you that they have moments where it's not always working perfectly. But that's really the beauty of a good relationship, is when you have the challenge and you rise to the challenge and you try to work through the challenge, you try to help each other through what I call in what I'm writing, the 4 aspects of mature love, which are care, respect, responsibility, and knowledge. When you really understand the other person, you have a mood of care to give them what they need to grow. So if your partner's, smoking weed or cigarettes or whatever, that's a temporary thing. They're not going to be like that forever. And if you can have a mood of non-judgment, but look past the conditioning and see their underlying soul or pure being, as we are taught by our acharyas, then you're getting to a place of real love. And when that happens, transformation happens. So when Gurudev came to see us, he saw all the crunky stuff about us, it was very obvious to him, please stop, okay? But he just helped, he looked beyond that, he loved us for who we are, and all of a sudden we found ourselves transformed or in a process of transformation. That's my answer. Thank you.
Awesome. Lolita, Didi, do you want to add anything or?
The only thing, it was a wonderful presentation, Gaur and Viv.
Yes.
Really, really beautiful, and so many, amazing points in it. No, the only thing I was thinking to add was it requires a lot of patience on the other person. So a lot of patience and tolerance, and then you see the transformations that Budara is talking about.
Thank you.
Hang in there.
Hang in there. Okay, the next person I'm going to go, next devotee I'm going to go to is, let's see, I will go for Charu Chandrika. Didi, are you there? And then afterwards, I'm going to ask Dilip, Prabhu, if you want to answer. You have 1 minute.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I'm the best person to talk about these things, but nice to see you. Yeah, I thought you gave a very wonderful presentation, and like Tarun Krishnapur said, very natural, holistic, and you covered many points, and I think devotees would have learned a lot from your sharing. So I don't know if I have such a kind of, in a way, positive answer to that, maybe going from another angle. I think if someone's drinking and smoking, that can go on for years as well. So I personally wouldn't be so happy with that. But I can also see that if someone's patient and tolerant there, and I think a lot of prayer would go a long way as well, for that person, and because definitely it's very unfavorable. So yeah, I think Padara Prabhu knows a lot about compatibility, and I remember I was married before, and he did our compatibility charts, and at that time he said we were very my former husband and I were very compatible, and we were. So I think that's a good thing to look at as well. Yeah, just to see if you are, because if the compatibility isn't there so much, then you're going to have to work really hard at the relationship, and maybe it's going to be too much of a struggle, and it's going to be too much of a disturbance. So I think that's an important aspect as well.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming from a different angle as well. I like that. I think that's why we have a wide panel, so with a panel with a wide range of devotees, so that we get all of these different perspectives on a question or an issue. Dilip?
Hare Krishna. Visvambhara, beautiful to see you. Gaur, very nice to meet you.
Wow.
I look forward to, amazing to see you both, and I look forward to speaking with you another time. It's been a long time, and I'm so grateful to you both for this amazing and very, very beautiful presentation. I've learned a lot listening to you in the last few minutes, so thank you so much.
No way.
Wow,
Good
Dylan,
to
great
see
to see you.
I think the last time we saw you in Italy was Srila Gurudev.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago. Vidara Prabhu and Lalita have talked about you, as recently, a few months ago, and Yashodananda Prabhu and I were talking about you. So I'm so excited to hear what you were saying today. So thank you so much for your wonderful words. As a devotee and as a friend, I've learned quite a lot, and I was, feel a bit out of my depth because my relationship with my wife is magical and beautiful. And, like all of us, there are so many difficulties in day-to-day marriage, after 22 years. So I feel like I really got a wonderful insight to be a better husband, a more caring individual, and to see if I can serve her, more graciously as a husband. So anyway, we'll talk another time. Coming back to that important question.
I think you touched on something, and that is serving each other, even if you don't want to use that word serve. I think it's a nice word.
Yes.
For some women in the 21st century, it kind of can feel like serve, but
Yes.
I know what you mean. And it means, how can we help each other to get to the place that you need to be, and how can you help
It's two-way.
me
Yeah.
get to where I need to be?
It needs to be symbiotic. It's two-way.
Yes. So I really want to use this opportunity to be to serve more in my relationship, and to be, because the commitment is there. We've been married for 22 years. There's a lot of love and affection, and the commitment is deep. But, still there are so many more things that we can do with Krishna and Gurudev at the center. So, but I want to make sure I say something to the question that was asked. Forgive me for being a bit thick, but I didn't quite understand at the beginning of the question. So could you just repeat it again? It was, if you're not in an ideal relationship and someone's smoking and drinking, was that the question? How you would deal with that? Was that the question?
Basically the question. But could you answer in like 20 seconds? Because we're...
Yeah, of course. I think what, was just said before about, to question whether you really are committed to the relationship in the first place is the starting point. How do you view this relationship first and foremost? Once you decide your commitment, then, empathy is always the second step, and understanding, as Vidara Prabhu was saying. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Okay, I'm next going to ask Visvambhara and Gauravani. Who wants to go first? You have 1 minute each. And also let me know if you want me to repeat the question.
Oh, I got the question. You could start first, maybe.
I think if it's not an ideal relationship, then possibly just ask yourself, what is there? Like, just really, it's a hard question to ask, but do you want to look back in 5 years and be in the same position? Or is this the person that you can build a foundation with? The foundation has to be strong. So the drinking and the smoking, I think, is superficial. Like I think Vidara was saying, I think, is this a devotee? Is this a non-devotee? Do you have the same goals,
values?
Do you want to both have children? Do you want to get married? I think these are some questions. When we can't answer whether or not the relationship should continue on, that's only for you to answer. But the question is, do you have enough of a foundation to build a marriage on? Do you really have compatibility, like Charachandrika Didi said? And do you have enough alignment together to build something strong on? Because marriage is hard. I don't know if I want to say that again, like Dilip said, is marriage takes work and marriage takes effort. And you really want to be able to have a lot of care and love for that person in order to work through that stuff. So.
Okay. Ditto again. No, I mean, no, I don't think I have much to add. Everybody pretty much covered it. Partnerships need to be symbiotic. Symbiotic means you're both growing. If somebody feels like they're just giving, and marriage is an institution, it's a quote unquote institution where there's a quote unquote legal commitment, right? And a spiritual commitment. if you're not married, then, you know, how long have you been together? There's a lot of other questions that you should reflect on. Is it been together for 2 years, 3 years, been together for 10 years? Well, why hasn't him or her put a ring on it?
Yeah.
Right.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
I know Gurudev, I have enough experience with Gurudev being with couples in the room and with ourselves, that he didn't want you to just be dating forever
Yeah.
if that wasn't the goal. So actually, when I got initiated, he put neck beads on me and he asked me if I was married. And at the time I was dating a non-devotee. And I said, no, I'm not married. And then he said, you should marry a very good devotee. So I didn't know what that meant at the time. What I took from it later was, you know, don't waste your time with this person that you knew was not going anywhere, that you were not aligned with. I mean, he was a meat eater, you know, all these things. And when Gurudev said that to me and put neck beads on me and said that to me, it was like such a wake-up call. Like, don't waste your time. Don't waste your time.
Yeah, they're not growing to your values. Yeah.
It's not, you know, and that was advice that he gave to me directly, but I took that like, don't waste your time with these guys that you know you're not going to, you know that you're not going to have, you know, a partnership with.
Exactly. All right.
I think unless Yashodananda Prabhu and or Jagatam Didi are really passionate to answer this question as well. Okay, you are. Okay. I was going to move on to the next question. I think because we have, I'm gonna let you speak in a sec, but I think because we have 7 panelists on or thereabouts for the future questions, we're gonna maybe not ask all of the panelists, and I'm gonna encourage the panelists to pass on questions so that they can then answer future questions. Okay, Yashodananda Prabhu, you have 1 minute.
Okay, so there's 2 circumstances. Are you married or you're not married? If you're not married, I've been in this situation after my marriage when I was in a relationship with someone and I could see after 3 months, I liked her very much, but it wasn't going to help my bhakti, so I ended it. Okay, so if you're not married, don't waste time. If you are married, I think it's a different scenario. You've made vows. So in that situation, I'd say, as Bhakti Rakshak Maharaj said, the environment is always favorable. However, if you're dealing with someone who's really not compatible and it's difficult, it's really important to have some systems around you that are going to help you deal with that difficulty. You need a good mentor. You need someone you can go to and confide in and who can nourish you. Some Shiksha Guru as well. And you need to have good practices, great sadhana. Otherwise, you're not going to make it through. And you have to have really clear red lines. If there's violence in the relationship, you leave.
Very bold. Thank you so much. Shodananda Prabhu. Okay, so the good questions just keep flooding in. Okay, so my next question is just going to be for Visvambhara Prabhu and Gauravani Didi. And you get 1 minute each. I think from now on, I'm going to go for a more hardline approach. 5 seconds after I hold up the finish please sign, I'm going to mute devotees. Please don't take any offense. Otherwise, we don't. Sorry, what was that?
Good.
Good. Okay, you approve. Okay, well, yeah, this is your session as much as it's anyone else's, or more than it's anyone else's. So yes, if we have your permission, that's good. So the question is, Hare Krishna, if you think it is appropriate, would you share some of the instructions Srila Gurudev gave you about how to be a couple? Thank you.
Many times Srila Gurudev used Ram Leela. So many times he said, you should be like Sita. And he told, no matter how many harsh words Lord Ram spoke to Sita, she always kept love and affection. This was really hard for me. Always have the mood like Sita Devi did. So even if Lord Ram spoke harsh words, he wanted to stay, you know, sweet, and you know, he gave on many occasions, he used this example of Lord Ram and Dharma, Mariada.
Marietta, yeah.
And Vishram can touch on it a little bit more, but at our wedding ceremony, and again, this is particular instructions to us, but he wanted us to really take our marriage vows very, very seriously. And in front of our yagya, he made us repeat loudly, "We will not divorce." And he made us repeat it 3 times.
That's right. That's right. And other specific instructions Gurudev gave us were, and I touched upon this in my presentation, our presentation, was that marriage is not just the two of you, but it's also the others. And at our wedding ceremony, we had the privilege and opportunity to have wonderful Vaishnavas attend. Gurudev was the master of ceremonies. He picked the wood himself from the tree branches. He made the fire pit with Madhuvrat and Madhav Maharaj, and then he engaged in the fire yagya. Vrinda Didi and Brajanath Prabhu said this was the first time they ever witnessed in 25 years Gurudev doing the fire ceremony from beginning to end, and sitting in the beginning, speaking, and at the end, and coordinating and orchestrating. This is his writing retreat. And he gave instructions throughout the fire yagya to Madhav Maharaj, to different priests, to us, every step. Specific instructions, the garlands, where was the gold. Gurudev was very detailed orientated. And with regards to the relationship, he told us, and told me in particular, make sure you get blessings, not just from Gurudev, but from also my godbrothers, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, my own father, our brothers, our sisters, everybody, and Gurudev, everybody that was present at that wedding, Gurudev wanted, it was an auspicious moment. So blessings, always seek for blessings.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you so much for your answers. I think you ended that really nicely as well. Really sorry to cut you off. It's such a deep question. I think all of these questions are very deep and it's hard to do justice to them. I'm now reducing the time down to 30 seconds. So good luck, guys. The next question is, well, it's a 2-in-1 question because 2 people have asked a very similar question, and it's on the subject of sex and intimacy. So I want to say, if any devotees want to pass on this question, I really don't want to put anyone in an uncomfortable position to answer if they're not feeling, if they don't feel okay to do so. And I'm also going to reiterate, I'm going to cut off if you go 5 seconds over once I've held up the sign. Okay, so the 2 questions are, the longer one is, there is a strong emphasis on renouncing sexual desire within this movement. I've seen couples break apart because one didn't want the karma involved with having sex, which is not for the propagation of children, while the other needed the physical intimacy to create emotional intimacy and connection within the relationship. How can we understand sexual need within KC, and where is it appropriate to draw the line? And then the brief question is, how do we retain intimacy and romance when the 4 regulations prohibit sex without procreation? So one is kind of asking how to understand sexual need and where do we draw the line, and one is asking how to retain intimacy and romance when we have the 4 regulative principles. So I guess like both questions like warrant their own answer, but I'm going to ask the panelists to answer in accordance to their desire.
Can I just suggest, I know we're short on time, but you can't answer this in 30 seconds. You've got to give it a minute. Otherwise, it's just not even worth answering the question.
Okay. That's.
But be strict on a minute, but give it a minute.
Yeah. Okay, so the first person I'm going to ask, because I didn't ask her before, is Jagatham Didi, if you want to answer. Is she here?
Move on.
Okay, we'll move on. Okay, okay, we're gonna go in reverse order. So Yashodananda Prabhu, you're next. Oh, you've just gone on mute.
Mute, you should have.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to answer this question two ways. First, I'm going to answer the question with a question. After I finish, I want Visvambhara to go back to what he was saying, because he was about to say Prabhupada said, and then he didn't tell us what Prabhupada said. So I want to, yeah, I think that's important, because I think, I have a feeling these instructions have been a little misunderstood in Krishna conscious, and I'm interested to know what Visvambhara is saying about what Prabhupada said. I think, like everything, it's about, we're not a religion, a spirituality of renunciation. We're a spirituality of attraction. And we're attracted, we want to be in the transcendental world. And the degree to which we have that taste, we can give up. I think just going deeply into the foreg of giving up sex when you're in marriage is just not realistic, unless you're particularly advanced. So you need to communicate that with your partner and go at a pace together that keeps that intimacy. Otherwise, I think you're asking for trouble.
Thank you. That's perfect timing as always. Okay. Visvambhara Prabhu, you look slightly used. Maybe that's just your
No, I'll address it. So I'm the expert on this. No, I'm not. I think the Prabhupada at Paramananda and Satyabhama's wedding, I think it was in Montreal, Canada, famous wedding he did, and he spoke a lot on sex, impurity, purity, yes, lust, right, sin, and really it's really about these sinful quote unquote actions. Don't guilt. It's about dovetailing anything you do, any action you do into spiritual life. You don't surrender it artificially. You dovetail it, right? Saying, I'm not attached to anything, but actually everything is in relation to Krishna, right? And being rightly, in a position of understanding that everything is in relationship to Krishna. Renunciation. Prabhupada said at the wedding, I'm a sannyasi. I renounced family life. I renounced children and grandchildren, but I'm arranging this marriage. I'm engaging in creating families. So is that an oxymoron? What was Prabhupada doing? Is he a real sannyasi? Is it appropriate for anybody to question that? Right? He's dovetailing, and he's creating a platform for where sex is allowable, because through sex, lust is treated. And Prabhupada used that example of milk and yogurt. You just take milk alone, it'll mess up your gut. If you take yogurt with the physician, it's then you're treating the gut through probiotics, right? So he was very happy to be arranging marriages, which actually then the purpose of marriages, yes, is to have children and or to get rid of these other sinful activities. It's not like you renounce sex, right? But you acknowledge that marriage is not solely for sense gratification either. But marriage is an institution that's powerful, that dovetails sense gratification. It's like Didi worship. Didi worship, you don't say, I don't want opulence, I don't want good clothing, I don't want jewelry. Prabhupada says, get great jewelry, get great big buildings. Was he into opulence? No, he was dovetailing. He was dovetailing the opulence. He was dovetailing the sexual energy. He was dovetailing the creation, the power into Krishna consciousness. So it's dovetailing, in my opinion. So don't surrender sex. And that's my position. Gauravani?
Well, I'm going to speak on a very material platform, and that is, again, I started off this conversation saying that I can only speak about what's real with me, and even when it comes to philosophy. So I had to, when I came kind of back into Krishna consciousness, I kind of told myself, I'm not going to be driven by fanaticism, and I'm not going to flog myself. I'm only where I'm at. I'm the tortoise here. I'm the hare, or I'm sorry, I'm the tortoise, not the hare. I'm taking it slow. And I think when our focus becomes, oh, all the things we're doing wrong, then we completely lose focus on what we're doing right. And all I know is that my kids want to do a Ekadasi at 5, 8, and 10. So we must be doing something right. And do we engage in some sense gratification? Absolutely, you know, and I think that I'm the first person that will say, and I'm okay with that because I'm where I'm at. So I think, again, when it comes to relationships and sex life, look, do we have intimacy? Absolutely. But are we still engaged in Krishna conscious activities? And is that the center? Yes. So maybe if we weren't engaged in that and we were more distant, then Krishna would also be distant from us. So I don't know if that makes sense, but if, you know, like, I guess if you haven't eaten a meal, then you can't concentrate on your work, or kids can't concentrate on school. And if you're agitated by something, which, you know, look, I grew up and there was many people that were, what do you call,
restricting
when you
monastic.
know, yeah, you know, I mean, my father took sannyas when I was 1 year old. We know now that this is not the case. Does any of our acharyas left there? Very few that, you know, sent their kids to Gurukul when they were, you know, 3, 4 years old. So again, I'm kind of, it has to be real with you. Yes, what's in Shastras there, what Gurudev spoke on Vyasasan, he said, this is the ideal. So yes, maybe in some lifetimes, or maybe even at some point in this lifetime, who knows? But I think if we're always looking at the dangling carrot, is always going to be away from you. And I think that in a marriage, practically speaking, we are in this world, it's Kali Yuga, we're in material bodies, we have needs, and that is kind of, you know, this is my answer. I don't know how it is for anybody else, but I just know that if you're holding yourself back, then you're going to end up being resentful of the other person, or the other person will be resentful of you. So
Yeah.
there are needs, like you have to put gas in a car, and you know, there are certain needs that couples have, and part of that is sex and sex life. There you go.
There you go, Tarun. Off to
Very
you.
well. Thank you. Just in case our other panelists are confused, the rule is that we're allowed to give some leeway to the guests, but everyone else is kept to these restrictions. Like last week with Bhagavat Maharaj, he got some extra time. The next person, please forgive me if this isn't exact reverse order, is Dilip Prabhu. You have 1 minute.
Well, very little to add. I think it's been so well covered from what has just been said. But I think being real, starting with where you are actually at, is the essence of this. I get very confused with Krishna consciousness myself, but I start with telling the truth about what I'm actually experiencing, and always be real to underline that point.
Thank you. You definitely get in the Holistic Bhakti good books for such a concise answer.
I want to be a good student as well.
The next person is Charu Didi. If you want to answer this question, or if you don't.
I don't know. The thing that kind of came to my mind is, you know, past life samskars, that some people have, you know, a lot of samskars where they have those desires to a great degree. So, you know, it's going to be more difficult for them to control that. Therefore, I think, you know, everyone's already said that to be somewhat natural and, you know, not to be too artificial, and you understand where you're at, and, you know, but have your eyes on the goal. And I know that I was married when I came to Gurudev, and Gurudev, I think, gave me a big injection, and it really helped to, you know, me focus and able to kind of move away from that. So that was my experience, but others have their own experience, so it's different for everyone, you know.
Oh, thank you so much. Budara Prabhu?
Just very quickly, I think every individual and every couple are in a different situation. And everybody has their different guna karmas that they've acquired, as Char was suggesting. So that's on one side of the picture. On the other side of the picture, Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas, Srila Prabhupada, especially when he came to the West, set this standard rather high. It's the duty of the acharya to set the highest standard, because if we don't know what it is, we don't know what the ultimate perfection that we're aiming at is. But we have to somehow reconcile these two ends of the spectrum, where we're at and what the goal is. Eventually the goal is to sublimate all of our desires, whatever they may be, to the service of the Supreme Lord. And that takes time.
Thank you. Okay, we only have, if we are very strict on time, we only have another 5 minutes or so. So Yashodananda Prabhu and I were thinking of asking the audience, do we either want to go on for another half an hour, or look into perhaps doing an encore session in 2 weeks' time? That isn't necessarily tying the two of you down.
Encore.
You want to do it?
He loves to speak.
Yeah. Encore because
Yeah,
the
I
subject
agree.
is so vast. And
Yeah,
Big
we
one.
scratched the surface of it.
yeah.
Encore, encore,
Encore.
I think that's it, Tarun. Decision made.
There's a merger of kingdoms. We're discussing mergers of kingdoms here, man. Everybody's a kingdom. This is serious.
Do you play chess, Vish?
Huh?
Do you play chess?
Boys are learning.
The boys are learning, yeah. Yes.
Okay, online. I'll play with them online. So in 2 weeks, I think it's a fantastic subject. I think Visvambhara and I think you both, Visvambhara and Gauravani, have kicked this off beautifully. I think the questions are fantastic, and I think this is so long time in coming. I think we're so starved of this discussion. I think let's go for it in 2 weeks' time. And I think what we can do is we can play back the recording, Tarun, and we can summarize some of the key points and use that to promote it, to bring more people in. Because I think devotees need to have an honest discussion about these subject matters. It's long enough under the carpet.
Yeah, I really agree.
I'm feeling like I'm burning with it. It's like, oh my God, it's all going on. The sex desire runs this world, and yet for some reason we never talk about it. We're worse than the Catholics.
No, you're completely right. For me personally, it's an issue, and all my devotee friends who I'm close enough to talk with have all mentioned, that they have a struggle with this, like an addiction or something more than how they want it to be.
But in your case, Tarun, you should be celibate.
I have to go pick up my daughter, but I want to say one last thing that I remembered during our wedding, and that's Gurudev said that marriage is service. And actually, so it ties into what Dilip was saying about serving each other and then having a source of service. And I think if you have that, then all the other stuff becomes like kind of afterthoughts, and it doesn't become as important if you have that center service, whether that's serving your children because they're little devotees, or serving book distribution, or serving, like Visvambhara's company is Gurudev's company. He's always had that as, Gurudev's, center. And so I think if you have that service in the center of your marriage, or at the start before marriage in the center of your relationship, like what can we do, how can we serve together, then all of these other things I think will kind of like loose ends will kind of just kind of fall into place. They won't be as, your head won't be as bothered by them.
Yeah. I like to end with the quote from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Anakshatasya vishayan yataram upayujatata nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam varagya chate. Right. So this is Rupa Goswami basically stating that when one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness. On the other hand, one who rejects everything without the knowledge of relationship to Krishna is not as complete in his renunciation. So my mother uses this example when it comes to dressing. She loves to dress very beautifully, and she puts on beautiful scents and everything else. And she recalls in Krishna consciousness when Prabhupada saw her and met her, he said, "You are a demigoddess." He told my mother Narmada. And she recalls that Prabhupada inspired all of his disciples when it came to Didi worship to whatever they felt inspired. If it was perfumes, incense, clothing, jewelry, yes, don't renounce that, but engage that, right? And so that propensity to engage those beautiful energies and intimacy, friendship, marriage, sex, that's also those energies. So I think the artificial rejection, right? It's not nirvishesha. It's not the movement of nothingness. So.
Good.
All right, ball, everybody. I have to go pick up my daughter. I'm going to be late. First
All
day
right.
of school.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Very cool.
All right.
So as we finish, I want to express my gratitude to all of the panelists. I want to say thank you especially to Sriman Visvambhara, Prabhu, and Srimati Gauravani, Didi, who are obviously very busy with 3 young children, full-time work, to come and give us their time and energy to speak and to speak so openly and candidly. It's so beautiful to see devotees share like in such a unforgiving environment when you're just staring at a blank screen. So I think what we have is very special. No one on this entire call except for me has seen all of these amazing questions. I want to thank all of the participants for submitting them, and I am really excited to be asking them in 2 weeks' time. So yeah, Hari Bol. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhaeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Do you want to say anything else, Yashodananda Prabhu or Visvambhara Prabhu, before we
Yeah.
end the stream?
Well, we can't wait for 2 weeks.
Me neither.
Badar is chuckling. He doesn't know he's doing the presentation with Lalita.
I'm not chuckling now, am I?